Greetings, everyone. I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
And welcome to English Digest. And today we're going to continue with our literature unit. Remember last time we introduced our featured novel to you. It is a work of literature entitled For Whom the Bell Tolls. That's Ernest Hemingway's masterpiece on war. And last time we summarized the novel for you.
Yeah.
You still have to read it, though. You catch all the little nuances and stuff that we couldn't possibly cover.
No, there's a lot more that goes on. We don't have enough time. Yeah.
Sure. And, of course, Ernest Hemingway uses a pretty simple style of writing that may be easy for you to comprehend and understand. I know that I read it for that reason. But in any particular case, we are going to be talking about Ernest Hemingway himself in today's program.
But first, guys, we're going to do what we always do. We're going to read through the article. American author Ernest Hemingway was born near Chicago, Illinois, in 1899. Influenced by his father, he developed an interest in guns and spent time in the great outdoors. As a teenager, he played football and learned how to box. He also took an interest in writing, working as an editor of his school newspaper. When World War I broke out, he joined the Red Cross, working in Italy as an ambulance driver. It was there that he was seriously injured and almost died. Experiencing war up close would have a major effect on his writings. After the war, he moved to Paris to pursue his career in writing. There, he became friends with writers F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, and others. They became known as the Lost Generation, a group of artists who believed their dreams had been shattered by the First World War. They came to believe that life is futile and that the only thing worth pursuing is truth. If dealing with war wasn't enough, Hemingway got another shock in 1928 when his father committed suicide. He would later explore his father's mindset in his novel For Whom the Bell Tolls, as its main character contemplates killing himself. In 1953, Hemingway received the Pulitzer Prize for The Old Man and the Sea. In the same year, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Sadly, thoughts of suicide also plagued Hemingway in the later years of his life. As he approached old age, Hemingway began suffering from high blood pressure and depression. Unable to put up with the pain, he took his own life in 1961. To this day, Hemingway is arguably the greatest figure in American literature. His narrative style sets a standard that many later writers have aspired to emulate.
Okay, it's time for us now to discuss the contents of today's lesson. We're not talking about our featured novel so much as we are the author of the novel, Ernest Hemingway. Well, American author Ernest Hemingway was born near Chicago, Illinois, in 1899. So it wasn't in Chicago itself, but perhaps one of the suburbs, maybe in Evanston or Cicero or places like that. I could look it up if I wanted to, but in any case, yeah, let's just say he was born near Chicago way back in 1899, just before the turn of the century. Influenced by his father, he developed an interest in guns and spent time in the great outdoors. So, yes, indeed, in America, we love our guns, and Ernest Hemingway had an interest in guns, maybe in rifles or shotguns or whatever. A lot of times people are interested in guns in the U.S. because they like hunting, and you can own guns legally in the United States in some circumstances. If you like hunting, you could get yourself a rifle or a shotgun. I've never owned a rifle myself. I fired a shotgun before to see what it was like. A friend of mine mine took me duck hunting once to see how it was. But in any case here, Ernest Hemingway liked guns, so I guess he liked hunting and loved the great outdoors. If we talk about the great outdoors, we talk about all the wonderful things you can do outdoors. You can go hiking, you can go hunting, you can go fishing, and you can really be an adventuresome kind of guy.
So as a teenager, he played football and learned how to box. So he was an athlete. We know, Tom and I were talking about his granddaughters who became famous, and they're very tall. So I'm sure he was also a tall guy. He also took an interest in writing. He worked as an editor of his school newspaper.
And he took an interest in writing. If you take an interest in something, you become interested in that thing. And as we said, he was an editor at the school newspaper. And when World War I broke out, which was back in 1914, he joined the Red Cross. The Americans got involved in World War I later, but the war broke out way back in 1914. So in some capacity, he was working as an ambulance driver in Italy when the war broke out. And here, broke out is the past tense of the verb phrase to break out, which could mean a couple of things. If you're in prison and you escape, we could say you broke out of prison. If you're, say, 14 or 15 years old and you have all sorts of zits on your face, we could say, oh, you're really breaking out. You have lots of acne there. But in this particular case, it just means the war began. When it broke out, so to break out means something kind of happened all of a sudden.
Yeah,
suddenly.
Good.
So war broke out. He joined the Red Cross, and he was driving an ambulance in Italy. An ambulance, of course, is a special vehicle that takes sick people from one place to another, usually to a hospital.
Yeah, so it was there that he was seriously injured and almost died. Experiencing war up close would have a major effect on his writings. That's true. If you see something up close or experience it up close, you're right there. You're not sitting at home watching something on TV or reading about it in a book. You're actually there up close. Sometimes you'll see the phrase up close and personal, which means you're really close. After the war, World War I, he moved to Paris to pursue his career in writing. Back then, Paris was the place to be. We had a lot of really smart, talented people moving to Paris and hanging out together. It was kind of a fun era, I think. Now, if you pursue something, pursue means to chase or to follow after something. So if you're pursuing a career, you're actually trying to get that career established and to get some success in that particular career. His career was in writing or writing to produce novels. There are different kinds of writers. He, of course, wrote novels primarily. And it was in Paris that he was rubbing shoulders with writers like F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, and others. So he became friends with them by hanging out. I know a lot of these guys, they didn't have jobs, right? They're artists, so they would sit around talking, drinking, smoking most of the day. Kind of an easy life to live, but that's what was going on in Paris.
You did say he wrote mostly novels, but that does remind me that he wrote a memoir of his experiences in Paris. It was entitled A Moveable Feast. I remember I read that maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I don't really remember much from it, but yeah, it was a memoir, nonfiction and stuff like that.
About his own life, yeah.
His life and being around those other people. So he was pursuing his career in Paris to become a writer. He hung out at coffee shops there and stuff like that. And there were some other people there who were doing the same. F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, and other people. I think there were also painters and other kinds of artists there as well. And they became known as the Lost Generation, a group of artists who believed their dreams had been shattered by the First World War. Yes, lots of people say that, yes, that was the most ridiculous war that was ever fought. It was a totally unnecessary bloodbath in which millions of people died unnecessarily. So, yes, it shattered a lot of people's dreams. In this sentence, we have the verb to shatter. That means you break something, you cause it to break suddenly into lots of small pieces. We often use the word shatter to talk about glasses. The glass shattered when it was dropped on the floor, for example. But here their dreams were totally destroyed. Their dreams were shattered because of World War I, which took place in Europe mostly.
And they came to believe that life is futile and that the only thing worth pursuing is truth. So they were disillusioned. There wasn't a lot of hope there, it sounds like. They came to believe just means they didn't start out believing that way or thinking that way, but after a while and talking with others, they came to the conclusion that life is futile. Futile just means pointless. It's really not capable of producing any useful results, so it's just pointless. Life is futile. It's very depressing to think that way. And that the only thing worth pursuing is truth. And they felt like by writing their feelings and thoughts that they were presenting truth to the world. Okay, guys, this is probably a good time to take a break. We're going to listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back.
Hello， 大家好，欢迎收听 English Digest， 我是 Trevor。今天我们要阅读的文章是 Unit16 文学单元的第二天课程。在今天的课程中，我们将会介绍一位非常知名的作家，诺贝尔文学奖得主 Ernest Hemingway。首先，文章的第一段提到，海明威从小就受到父亲的影响。我们看到这一段的第二句 ，Influenced by his father, he developed an interest in guns and spent time in the great outdoors. 受他父亲影响，海明威逐渐对枪产生兴趣，并且花时间在郊外。本句一开头的过去分词 influenced 是分词构句的用法。当两个句子彼此有关联时，例如先后发生或是有因果关系，而且两个句子的主词相同时，就可以将其中一句的主词省略。省略主词的那一句，如果是主动的话，则将该句的主要动词变成 VING。那如果是被动的话，则是将 be 动词也一起省略，只留下 VPP。然后两句呢，只用逗号连接，不需要连接词。例如，这句本来是 Hemingway was influenced by his father， 句号。He developed an interest in guns and spent time……两句的主词都是 Hemingway， 所以省略第一句的主词。又因为第一句是被动，所以 was 也省略掉，然后用逗号连接两句。我们再看第一段的第四句 He also took an interest in writing, working as an editor of his school newspaper. 他也对写作感兴趣，担任校园报纸的编辑。这一句本来是 He also took an interest in writing， 以及 He worked as an editor of his school newspaper。两句主词都是 he， 所以省略第二句的主词 he， 然后这句是主动，所以 worked 变成 VING working。文章的第二段提到，海明威后来到了巴黎，和一群知名作家成为朋友。这群艺术家又被称为 Lost Generation。我们看到这一段的第四句 They came to believe that life is futile and that the only thing worth pursuing is truth。他们开始相信人生是徒劳的，而真理是唯一值得追求的事。本句有两个 that， 各接一个完整的句子，形成 that 名词子句。在此句中，当作动词 believe 的受词。要注意的是，当动词后面接两个以上 that 名词子句作为受词时，只有第一个 that 可以省略，第二个以后的 that 都不可以省略。例如The politician denied that he took bribes from the technology company and that he had anything to do with the scandal. 这名政治人物否认他有向那间科技公司收贿，而且否认他和这件丑闻有任何的关系。本句用两个 that 名词子句作为动词 deny 的受词，只有第一个 that 可以省略。我们再看到这句 worth 是形容词，意思是值得的。本句的 worth 前面省略关系代名词和 be 动词 that was， Be worth 加 VING 是值得被什么什么的意思。主词必须要是 VING 文意上的受词。例如 The novel is definitely worth reading. 这本小说绝对值得一读。某些动词后面接 VING 的时候也有被动的意思，像是 need, require, deserve, bear, B-E-A-R 等等。例如 need 加 VING 相当于 need to be 加 VPP 需要被怎么样怎么样的意思。例如 The engine of your motorcycle makes a loud noise. It needs checking completely. 你的摩托车发出很大的声音，它需要彻底检查。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, guys, we're back. We're talking about Hemingway's masterpiece on war, the novel For Whom the Bell Tolls. When we went to the break, we were talking about how folks that were in that lost generation, those writers, they believed that their dreams had been shattered, broken into pieces by the First World War. War really just kind of interrupted all of their lives, and they weren't able to go on and achieve what they had expected to be able to do as young kids. You know, it just changed their dreams, and they lost a lot of their hope. So if dealing with war wasn't enough, Hemingway got another shock in 1928 when his own father committed suicide. To deal with something means you handle it. You face it, and you handle it. You don't avoid it or turn away from it. You have to actually struggle to do it, but you're dealing with it. We'll also say handling. We don't say handle with. We say deal with, handle, confront, face. Yeah, face problems. So he had another shock in 1928. And if you commit suicide, it means you kill yourself.
Right, and so this sentence also has kind of an interesting construction. If something wasn't bad enough, well, something even worse happened.
Yeah.
So you could say if dealing with war wasn't enough, or we often say if it wasn't bad enough, Hemingway got another shock in 1928, something even worse. His father did himself in. He committed suicide. He offed himself, as sometimes we say. Committed suicide means he killed himself. He would later explore his father's mindset in his novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Hey, that happens to be our featured novel here.
Yeah.
So he's exploring his father's mindset. Mindset basically refers to what you're thinking about. Maybe he had some way of knowing what his father was feeling, how his father was feeling, or what he was thinking about. Maybe his father kept a diary or something like that. So he explored his father's mindset in that novel. I guess he tried to imagine himself being his father. Yeah, if I were my dad and I wanted to commit suicide and I was fighting in Spain in the Civil War there, how would I think about things? How would I see the world if I were my father?
Yeah, so someone's mindset is how they're thinking at one particular time. So that's an interesting way to approach a book. Here it says that he would explore his dad's mindset as its main character in the book For Whom the Bell Tolls, and that's Robert, of course, contemplates killing himself. If you contemplate something, you think about something very thoughtfully for a long time. It's not a quick think. You actually really take some time to think about important things, maybe life, the purpose of life, what you want to do with your life. You want to contemplate those things. So in 1953, in the next paragraph, Hemingway received the Pulitzer Prize for The Old Man and the Sea. That's a book that you read, Tom, correct?
It is indeed. I actually read that when I first came to Taiwan a long time ago, The Old Man and the Sea. So I guess that was this book about a Cuban fisherman, I believe, who was out at sea and he was trying to catch a fish and he couldn't quite catch it and he was old and he was struggling. And so it's interesting that way, I suppose. I read it. I didn't think too much of it, but I suppose it's good in some ways. But he received the Pulitzer Prize for that book. back in 1953, and in the same year, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Okay, so yes, indeed, that same year, he got the Nobel Prize, and he also got the Pulitzer Prize. Pulitzer is an American prize, I believe, for journalism and writing and stuff like that.
It is.
Whereas the Nobel Prize, yes, covers literature, but it also covers science and chemistry and mathematics and things like that. Well, sadly, thoughts of suicide also plagued Hemingway in the later years of his life. So I guess his family has a history of suicide?
Yeah.
Or mental disease, depression.
Yeah.
There you go. It plagued him in later years of his life. Plague here as a verb means it kind of bothers you and it's just something that won't go away. It's troublesome. You wish it would go away, but it won't. Plague as a noun does refer to some kind of bacterial disease like the bubonic plague in Europe, the Black Plague, etc. But in this particular case, we're using it as a verb. It just was trouble for him and he just couldn't solve this problem. It plagued him in the later years of his life.
Yeah, I think he struggled a lot with suicide. He tried a couple of times. I think he was unsuccessful. Yeah, that's a tough thing to live with. When somebody is struggling mentally, he probably had chemical imbalances in his body. Some people, they don't have enough of certain hormones or chemicals in their brain that affect how they feel. So that was tough. As he approached old age, he began suffering from high blood pressure and depression. So if you have 高血压, it's high blood pressure and it can lead to either a heart attack or a stroke. So you got to be really careful. High blood pressure doesn't make you feel anything. I've had high blood pressure for a long time. It doesn't make you feel bad. That's why it's really important to take your medicine because you feel fine, but your blood pressure going up can lead to real big problems. Depression, of course, is what Tom was talking about. Mentally, you just feel like you don't have anything to live for. You're hopeless. Everybody else is happy around you, and you just feel darkness. So that's a tough thing to deal with.
Depression, indeed, and I usually myself kind of think of depression in two ways. One is just generally feeling sad about something.
Having a bad day, bad
You might
week.
be depressed, yeah, because you got fired from your job or your pet cat died or something. But there's also clinical depression in which there is something definitely something definitely wrong with you.
With your body, yeah.
And you should talk to a special doctor to get medication or therapy or whatever.
So that is a depression based on not an event. There's no action that preceded it. This is just the way your body is naturally. So, yeah, they're different, aren't they?
Just some kind of condition you have, so they are kind of different. And unable to put up with the pain, he took his own life in 1961. So he had pain, I guess, maybe from the blood pressure and also mental pain from the depression, so he could not put up with the pain. This is a phrase here, to put up with something. That means to tolerate something, something that is bothersome, but you can still live and try to figure out how to live with that problem, even though you know it's not going to go away. You could say this to somebody else. If you're, say, the boss of a company and you're going to fire an employee, you could say, Mr. Jones, I have put up with your terrible work attitude for too many years. You're fired. Get out. Collect all your things and never come back. Yeah. I'm not going to put up with you anymore.
Yeah, you can put up with somebody, you can endure somebody. It's not a situation you're happy with. But sometimes we have to put up with stuff we don't like. That's just life.
Yep.
You know, maybe you sit in a room with coworkers and there are a couple people that drive you nuts, but you have to put up with them because you know, you don't want to lose your job.
Yep.
So sometimes you have to put up with things. He had to put up with the pain, and eventually he thought, I can't do it anymore. So he wasn't able to put up with the pain. So he took his own life in 1961. To this day, so it means from the time when he was living until now, Hemingway is arguably the greatest figure in American literature. Arguably means people can argue about it. I don't agree with this statement, but somebody else might think he's the greatest writer ever, and we could have a debate about it. There are reasons why people could feel good about saying this. I don't feel that way, but, you know.
Yeah, I would say Mark Twain myself.
I love Mark Twain.
But in any case, yeah, he's arguably the greatest figure in American literature, according to some people.
Yeah.
His narrative style sets a standard that many later writers have aspired to emulate. So he sets a standard. A standard, of course, is a 标准, as you say in Chinese. It's just some kind of general set of rules that people agree to.
Yeah.
And so they kind of compare themselves. Well, you know, how does your writing compare to Hemingway? Okay, because it's kind of the benchmark or the standard of modern American literature. People tend to write that way, or they don't write that way. And lots of other writers thought that he was so great they have aspired to emulate his style of writing. To aspire, in this particular case, hey, isn't that a model of a computer? Is it the Asus Aspire or something like that? But to aspire means you focus your hopes and your ambitions in that particular direction. It's kind of setting a goal, and emulate is kind of like copying, right? You kind of follow after your role model.
Yeah, but if you emulate somebody, you actually try to take on their characteristics that are really great. So if you're emulating somebody, it's because you feel like they're a wonderful role model. Yeah, which a lot of people who want to be writers have looked to Hemingway and his writing style. I have to say, I think he's a perfect writer for second language learners because he doesn't use a lot of hard vocabulary words, and his writing isn't, you know, crazy complicated. It's good to read, so I recommend him to
It's an easy
listeners.
read, and you can read it and get it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And not have to think about things too much.
True.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
文章的最后一段提到，海明威后来获颁诺贝尔文学奖，但在晚年，海明威饱受高血压和忧郁症折磨。我们看到这一段的第5句 ，Unable to put up with the pain, he took his own life in 1961。无法忍受痛苦，海明威于西元1961年自杀。本句的 unable 也是分词构句的用法。原来的2句是 He was unable to put up with the pain。还有 He took his own life in 1961。2句的主词都是 he， 所以省略第一句的主词 was 变成 VING being， 又因为后面接形容词的时候 being 可以省略，所以只剩下形容词 unable。我们举一个例子，原来的2句是 Susan was suspicious of her brother's behavior. She decided to follow him to see what he was doing.苏珊对她弟弟的行为起疑，她决定跟随他去看他在做什么。合并之后就变成 Suspicious of her brother's behavior. Susan decided to follow him to see what he was doing. 以上就是今天的课程，谢谢收听。
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and make sure you join us again next time when we go back to our featured novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.